Hi there, my name is Philip Ideson. I want to welcome you to the Art of Procurement podcast, the podcast that helps you, a forward-thinking procurement professional, position yourself and your team to proactively take advantage of the revolution that's taking place in procurement today. By interviewing industry trailblazers and sharing insights from our own experiences, my team and I pull back the curtain and shine a light on the strategies, tactics, and tools that procurement teams are using to elevate their impact. And today on the show, I'm joined by Joel Andersson, Process Development and Digitization Project Leader for Indirect Procurement at IKEA. In today's conversation, which we recorded towards the end of 2024, Joel and I discussed IKEA's ongoing indirect procurement transformation journey, from a standing start with little to no authority within the IKEA organization to a world-class procurement team. We dig into the technology decisions that are powering their transformation, the importance of sustainability and risk management, and IKEA's focus on supplier relationship management. So let's go into the conversation where I asked Joel if he found procurement or if procurement found him.
Yeah, I heard the question many times, and I think I answered it in my mind many times as well, but I'm not sure how to answer it anyway. Now, I started to work in my career in factory. I did factory work, basically, and part of that work was managing inventory for the production. And through that, I started to work together with the people in that company who worked with procurement. And I really liked what they were doing, and yeah, it motivated me. And ever since and then I educated myself within it, and then so it became a passion to me then, and still is.
And today we want to talk a little bit about transformation in procurement and the journey as well that you've been on at IKEA. I wonder if you could just share, for people who aren't familiar with how IKEA as an organization is structured, with kind of the different operating units, and because it's kind of a central system and a franchise system. Could you just talk about a little bit about how that all works? Because I think that provides some context for the environment in which you're working.
Sure. So IKEA is, as you mentioned, a franchisor setup, and I work for the franchisor, which means the company that handles production of marketing and communication, development of range, sourcing of the products, transport of the products as well. But we don't own most of our distribution centers nor stores. That is managed by other companies. One of those companies, the biggest, is also an IKEA company. It's called Inka, INJKA. So that's our biggest franchisee, but it's a completely separate company. And there are also completely external ones with completely different ownership structures that also operate IKEA stores. When you go to the stores, you will not see the difference.
Right.
But yes, there are different owners to the stores.
Interesting. And honestly, I never realized that until I started to dig a little bit deeper into, as a frequent user and buyer of IKEA furniture for many, many, many years, never realized that it was the franchisor system. So it's very seamless, I think, to the consumer. When you think about the transformation journey in procurement for IKEA, could you just talk a little bit about, kind of from a time frame perspective, what are we talking about in terms of the journey that you've been on?
I would say 5 years. Yeah, and that's considering then the indirect procurement for IKEA. Our direct procurement is, of course, also developing and changing continuously, but it's much more mature. Our indirect branch was, if we go back 7-8 years, it was rather self-organized. Yeah, so that transformation, about 5 years.
What was the initial motivation to look and say, you know what, we want to try and professionalize procurement or go in a different direction? Was there something specific that drove that, or more of a desire to just be able to provide more value from indirect procurement to IKEA?
Yeah, there are some organizational factors into it that led up to the situation that we were in. But I would say the main assignment and purpose of having this investment in indirect procurement, it is to maximize the value that we get to our company and in the end to our customers. Yeah. So maximize what we get for every euro or dollar or Swedish krona or so that we spend. Yeah. So that is, and one part of that is of course low prices. But also quality is very important, and as well compliance in different aspects.
Now, coming from an organization that I'm sure had a relatively mature direct materials procurement organization because of how pivotal that is to the business model. When you started on the journey, were you looking to, how does direct procurement do things, and let's bring those over to indirect? Or were there any influences, positive or negative, on how you were starting to think about structuring an indirect procurement capability?
Yeah, I think I should talk about myself then. And, I have a background with 10 plus years in the direct procurement,
Mhm.
coming into indirect. Everything looks the same. It's suppliers, it's kind of products, sometimes it's services, but doesn't really matter. And it's like, yeah, let's just apply the same things. And,
Yeah,
and then, like, a few months down the line, it's like, okay, so everything looks the same from a high level, but when you get into the details, actually, there's a lot of differences that needs to be considered. And I think the biggest difference is the amount of stakeholders and the
hmm,
amount of suppliers. It's just so many more people, stakeholders in a way, both external and internal, that you need to manage. And also the operational flows are much more important in the indirect,
yeah,
also as an effect of that. And yes, we are taking many good learnings from our direct procurement still. So a lot of things are still applicable, but a lot of things also needs a little twist somehow to function in the indirect. Like maybe in the direct we do it for all suppliers, but
yeah.
in the indirect we can only do it for the top 100, maybe, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot more. So I made that jump as well. I was in automotive, and I started on the direct materials side on automotive and then jumped into indirect. And I think one of the things in indirect is just so much more nuance. Everything is a little bit more black and white on the direct material side because you're buying a specific material, or you're buying to, a highly engineered drawing
Mm, yeah,
and specification. Whereas on the indirect, often the scopes are very arbitrary, based on who your stakeholder is, and they have an idea of what they might want to purchase. But part of your job is to help them kind of figure out, okay, I need to take your idea into something we can actually go and buy and contract for. Um,
yeah, and often you need the help of the supplier as
yeah,
well to just figure out what is this actually that we are going to buy. It's like maybe we have something we want to achieve, but and we want to pay someone to help us, but we don't know what they will do for us really.
yeah.
Yeah,
We kind of know what the output looks like. We're not really
yeah,
sure how to get there.
yeah, yeah. So it's a little bit different. Yeah, I
So,
mean,
so
not so long ago, I was operationally supporting kind of a situation, and we know what we want, but we don't know what the contract should look like, right? So
yeah,
we need to ask the supplier, can you formalize this
yeah.
can you do the draft for the contract, because we are simply not able to describe it, like what's your standard? And that I don't think happens so much in the direct. Like you have your standards and you push them
No,
to the
you're
suppliers. And
you're using supplier paper a lot more in the
yeah,
indirect material side, and then so therefore need a lot more trust that that is written in a fair way and that
mm,
fairly captures what you want to do. I've seen so many of those contracts with gremlins that you don't understand until you start getting the service,
yeah.
that trip you up.
So which one did you enjoy more?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I enjoyed different things about both of them. So on the direct material side, I really enjoyed the fact you could physically see the outcome of your work. That I could see a car that was driving around that had a certain headlamp in it because of work that I'd done in new product development. And so that was really rewarding. And I partly like the thrill of the stress of, manufacturing plants will close down if you don't get what you need. If you don't get this where it needs to be when it needs to be there, or if you don't overcome problems in the design phase and with your supplier and stuff. Very stressful, but kind of rewarding. On the other hand, on the indirect side, I like the fact it's a lot more consultative. Indirect is for me was a lot more around, you're helping people bring ideas to life, and you probably have to be a lot more creative in how you think about solutions to problems. So it's a lot harder from that perspective. Both of them are difficult. I wouldn't say that one's harder than the other, but there was just bits and pieces of both. I probably enjoyed my career the most when I was on the direct side, when I reflect. But that's probably because I enjoyed automotive too. What do you feel?
Yeah, for me, definitely they both. I mean, I think for the direct, what I appreciate there was at least how we work, because the way we work in our company with our suppliers in direct procurement, we have very close relationships.
Mhm.
So when you're working with a number of suppliers in the direct procurements, you become very close to the people working in
Yeah.
those companies. So it's almost like you are yourself almost working in IKEA and a
Yeah.
few other
Your
companies where you
suppliers.
also contribute. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, and that's of course very interesting and rewarding, both to see the different company cultures and be part of that in a way, and the different cultures and so on. So that I really enjoyed a lot in the direct procurement. And then of course, like you say, it's high stakes in the direct procurement. It's like if there is a kitchen front missing in Australia, yeah, people will tell you
Mhm.
that it's missing. Yeah, it should
Yep.
be there. Yeah.
And
In the
and
indirect procurement, I really enjoy the creativeness. So, and I think that's a stronger drive in me. So, if I had to choose one, I mean, I like both, but I wouldn't want to let go of the indirect too easily.
yeah. I think that I feel the same in terms of indirect is the place where I feel more at home. But I think it also depends on your company. When I look at what I loved about direct materials was it was really global. How you're talking to people from different cultures every single day, different countries all around the world. In indirect procurement, it really depends on the organization you work for. Do you work in a global organization? If so, then you're still going to have that opportunity. If you work for an organization that's more regional, then you may not have that element where you're working with a global supply base.
Mm. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and thinking about it, I mean, visiting factories and seeing the
Yeah.
production, understanding how does this actually happen in reality, and being part of making that more efficient. That's also,
Mhm.
that's a nice feeling as well. Yeah.
Even though I never knew what was going on, I smiled and waved, and then afterwards I would have to speak to my engineers, and my engineers would have to be, for me, it was all about the relationship with the engineer so that they could translate all the technical stuff for me. Um,
Yeah.
but collaboration, I mean, that's the biggest thing I take out of both was it's really about collaborating with your stakeholders. And that's the same on the direct materials side as it is on the indirect side.
Mm. Yeah, for sure.
So you started on the journey to really grow the indirect procurement function at IKEA, and I know that you started to invest in technology at the beginning of that journey. What kind of, when you looked at the world of different options in terms of where to invest in technology, I'm not really talking about suppliers, but activities. Where did you decide that you lay the foundations?
Yeah, first of all, we needed to have visibility in what we're actually buying. So the first investment we did was a spend tool or
Hmm.
spend analysis tool where we could, yeah, put our data from different ERP systems into that, and get something that we could read out from that. Yeah, so that was the first thing we did, and then second step was, yeah, the source to pay or source to
Yeah.
goods receipt in our
Yeah.
case. I mean, to have a base for that. And I think where we are now, we're starting more and more to look into how to say both to get the most value out of what we already have in terms of both optimizing processes, but also the reporting and how to work with the data from what we do,
Hmm.
but also, peeking a bit at some best of breeds for some specific applications and things like that as well. Yeah.
As you were looking at it, what was the thought process on best of breeds versus looking at suites?
Yeah, I mean, from beginning, we didn't really have a big discussion about that, I would say. I mean, the one platform that was the way to go for us, we felt, because less decisions to be made and we can cover it all quite in a reasonable time. Yeah. So a lot of things spoke for that. And then I think once we get a bit more mature, we start to see like some best of breeds, maybe there is a value,
Mhm.
but then we have something to compare it with, and which I think is also what you need to be able to make that decision.
How did you find implementing a source to pay suite then kind of changed the game in terms of what your capabilities were? Or should I say that in a different way? Did you feel that that was a game changer, or was that one small step along a journey of a lot of small steps that all compounded upon each other?
It's definitely foundational.
Yeah.
It establishes procurement in a completely different way compared to if we would only have, like, POs through an email, or
Hmm.
and because, yeah, so it's absolutely foundational. Yeah. And then the value that we get out, we get increased visibility, of course, so we know more what is going on. And then it's not like just because you have a system doesn't mean that the purchases are different.
Right.
It doesn't change the prices by itself, it doesn't change the suppliers by itself, but it gives you something to work with. Yeah.
How did you start to build team around that then? Were you then able to go and make the case for increased headcount that you could then expand upon capabilities because you now have this data and more of a digitized process to support that?
Yeah, so those things, to some extent, they went hand in hand.
Mhm.
What happened, I would say, when we were establishing ourselves is that, like purchasing and procurement, it happened also before we had our more
Yep.
centralized organization. So there was a lot of people spread out working with, how to say, snippets of the procurement process or bigger parts of it. So those people have been, how to say, in-housed and
Mhm.
made space for in our organization. The one big thing in connection to the source to pay platform was that when we have the P2P that we didn't have before, that meant that we also put in place an operational procurement capacity that we
Yep.
didn't have at all before. So that was a case brought together with the digital solution, so to say. Then we have also in parallel grown a lot when it comes to more tactical, strategic category development resources and buyers and so on. And that is not so much driven by the fact that we have a digital platform, I would say.
Mhm.
It's more driven by the fact that we deliver very good results,
Yep.
measurable, clear results in terms of cost savings, and as well when it comes to compliance management and risk management. And that is very noticeable, and that of course can warrant that it's worth to invest in it. Yeah.
Yes. Once you start just starting kind of small or starting in certain categories of spend and being able to demonstrate your impact in certain categories, but then provided the you now have the outputs which can justify a business case to then grow into other areas. And I'm sure create the pitch as you're going into other stakeholder groups of why they
Yeah.
should work with procurement, with
Yeah.
central
So
procurement.
so the good examples is the most important in the beginning. That's
Mhm.
also when we look back what we see, how important that was. Like, go for that in the beginning where you think you will make a difference. Yeah. And I mean, if you are in that position like we were, where it's a lot of things are quite decentralized and
Yeah.
self-organized, for sure there are a lot of, how to say, low-hanging fruits that you can pick in the beginning. So it's important to pick those and
Yeah.
to show what that does. Yeah.
So with spend analytics in place, with the source to pay suite in place, you now are starting to increase the perceived value of procurement. So you're getting involved in a lot more projects, you're driving a lot of value. Kind of where did you then look at say, okay, what's the next leg of our journey? Where should we focus next on? One consolidating this, but kind of growing from there as well.
Yeah. So I mean, each category have their, how to say, direction and business plan
Mhm.
based on what's happening in their category, and it looks a little bit different for production machinery compared to what it looks like for IT solutions
Yeah.
and then application management and so on. So there are specific category plans. Then if we look at the totality and if we look at the digitalization as such, I mean, what is happening now is, I mean, everyone knows the Gen AI is
Mhm.
moving, and what was fantasy a few years ago suddenly is reality, and people are, I think, in general, grappling a bit with that and trying to understand what should we do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking into that for sure. And then we're also looking into enhancing further, I would say, services procurement, because it's a big part of what we do.
Mhm.
And services procurement, it is something interesting and particular and specific, and both from, how to say, the nature of that business of buying services,
Yeah.
but also in terms of risk management and compliance, because depending on the services you buy, as you know, the different laws come into play,
Mhm.
labor law and tax law and things like that. So it's a bit of an area that we still do development in.
Yeah, because a lot of times that spend is really fragmented among whether it's contractors, contingent workforce providers, MSPs, service providers themselves, and it's hard to get a handle on exactly what kind of activities are being bought by, through which channel, and also what's the most optimum. Are you buying contractors when it would make more sense to be buying based on deliverables from a
Yeah,
service provider, as an example?
yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting and complex area. So it's kind of an area that I like because
Mhm.
I kind of like that. So, but yes, and depending on the country you go to, all those titles that
Yes.
you just mentioned
Yep.
mean something else.
Yep.
Yeah. And then European Union, they have their own definition of different types of external worker. And yeah, so it's an interesting area, but also, I mean, I think we do it generally not bad,
Mhm.
the way we do it, but yeah, due to that complexity, there is so much things that can be developed further there as well. Yeah.
When you think about generative AI, because as you rightly say, everyone, there's kind of a bit of, there's an excitement, there's a fear, there's a confusion. Different organizations are, at different points along the way in their embrace of generative AI.
Mm.
When you think about it, as you're starting to explore generative AI, are you exploring it based on, I know I have this challenge, I wonder if generative AI can help me solve it, or this is what seems to be available right now in the marketplace related to generative AI. I wonder if there's a fit with that and what we do. Like, it's kind of top down or bottom up,
Yeah,
I guess.
I would say we have educated ourselves
Yeah,
to understand on some level. I mean, we're not experts, but on some level, what is possible and what is not possible. And we have seen, different examples and demos from different providers that are
yeah,
good in the area. And we have defined a number of use cases.
hmm,
Some of them small and how to say very straightforward. And some of them are bigger and more game changing.
yeah,
But I would say we are continuing to explore those game changing things while trying to make happen in reality the more simple things so that we can show in reality or see and experience in reality how it actually works for us.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked at the beginning, we've both spent a lot of time in procurement and seen a lot, experienced a lot. When you think about generative AI, do you look at it as with excitement of, wow, here's all these wonderful things that, for the last 20 years we wish we could do, and it looks like we may be able to do them, plus things we never even imagined was possible? Or do you look at it and think, you know what, I want to be, I think we should take things a little bit more slowly and figure out where the real use cases and the real impact is before we get too excited?
Yeah, no, I'm quite excited.
Mhm.
I mean, there are many use cases which are very clear and very straightforward, which will save a lot of time. That's what I'm thinking. It's like working in procurement is like many times you can have a dream of someone doing kind of preparing your presentations and preparing your written document, the pre-read to your presentation or whatever, or summarizing the meeting minutes and so on. Yeah, or evaluating different data points and
Mhm.
comparing to each other, looking for patterns in data and things like that. So it's like a little back office or an assistant or something like that. And then it's to find the right, how to say, just the right way to actually do it. So,
Yeah.
but that's the way I see it. It's like everyone is getting an assistant somehow.
Yeah.
And then in some cases that assistant can do the work for you, but that will only enable you to spend more time with your most important
Mhm.
suppliers, most important stakeholders, to focus where you really think that your personal expertise and competence and where your passion is,
Yeah.
where you really can make a
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
And the efficiency play is definitely needed within procurement. We always, I'm sure other people outside of procurement have the same challenges of too much to do and not enough time. But, we see it. Well, there were some data points that were shared recently in a podcast by McKinsey about, that they see, I think it's 50% greater spend under management per buyer in the last 5 years. Essentially buyers are being tasked with larger portfolios of spend, and an expectation that team sizes may reduce significantly as well in the future because of AI. So that's not sustainable. So we have to find ways to be smarter and quicker and more efficient,
Yeah.
just to be able to kind of stand still before we even think about what do we do next with all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So I think it's great news for procurement. Basically, that's what I think. Have you tried? Are you using it in your daily work? Like,
So I use ChatGPT to help me ideate and to help. It's almost like as a consultant by my side. Like, I'm throwing ideas together. I'm like explaining situations and then questioning, the AI based on like what kind of things should I be thinking about as I've got as I have this situation? And then how do I start articulating, some of the answers to that? So that's typically how I'm using it at the moment, as a little bit of a, because as a small business owner, you've got to do so many different, you context switching so many times.
Like a
I find
management coach or
exactly.
yeah,
I
yeah,
find it really helpful for that. I find
yeah.
it helpful when I was just talking to a colleague actually this morning in a team meeting about email writing. When you spend so much time trying to craft the perfect email, and then you stare at it and you think, should that sentence go here, or should that sentence go there, or is that run on words right, or whatever it is. Just kind of throwing in, this is my draft email, can you make it sound you know a bit more articulate? And and just going there, copy paste, you're good. So I try and use it for things like that
Yeah.
at the moment. I would love to be able to build my own, and this is where I'm looking at, can I build my own custom GPTs, as an example, where you can start to integrate workflow
Mm.
into the AI as well. So it's doing tasks based on triggers, but I've not got that far yet.
Oh, me neither. Me neither. We have our own, how to say, in-house instance of
Hmm.
Microsoft GPT kind of that we are
The Gemini, is it?
using. No, the Gemini is the Google one. So
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's Copilot, isn't it? I think.
yeah, ours is not Copilot. It's just called IKEA GPT.
Okay.
But
It's
it's
kind of,
based on the Microsoft
yeah.
Azure, which is based on the ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of an isolated
Okay.
version to keep data
Yeah.
safe and
Yeah.
whatever. But that's where we are right now. So that one, yeah, at least weekly I'm using it. Yeah,
Hmm.
mainly for creating summaries of
Yeah.
things. That I think it does, but most of the time it does a decent summary, and then it needs me to adjust it in a few places, and then it's good. It's not fully autonomous, really.
No, it gets you like 60, 70% of the way.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
can, and if you ask it too much, it can be overwhelming as well. I find that you start going too deep, and I was putting together a marketing strategy, you keep asking, and then all of a sudden you've got 40 pages
yeah,
of this stuff that you're never even going to read all of it, because it's too much, because it's just churning, churning, and churning, and then it
yeah,
can get overwhelming.
yeah. I talked with a colleague about that also. It's like, yeah, it's fast and it's efficient, but
Mhm.
also it's fun. So you can
Yeah.
really spend a lot of time with it.
Yep.
And then it's a question: was it fast and efficient compared to doing it yourself? Yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
took more time, but yeah.
You spend more time going down rabbit holes.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah, oh, you can do like this, and yeah.
yep.
But I guess it's when it's new and still in exploration, it's more like that. So yeah, but it's really cool. And I mean, what we do in procurement, we produce a lot of materials.
Yeah.
We produce PowerPoints, presentations. We take data from one place and put it in another place, and a lot of these things, this Gen AI can do really well.
Now, I just want to ask a couple of questions before we wrap up, and this is more relating to collaboration with suppliers. We talked about the importance of collaborating internally, but as you've kind of grown the impact of indirect procurement at IKEA, I know that IKEA as an organization has a really strong reputation for your commitment to sustainability. And I just wonder how, when you think about the value proposition of procurement, yes, cost is always one of the value propositions, but how have you approached sustainability from an indirect procurement perspective, and infusing that into, how you're helping both your suppliers, but also helping IKEA as well with that commitment?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And I think it's also, how to say, different companies have different language when they talk about things. So when I
Mhm.
talk about compliance and risk management, sustainability is part of that. What we have is we have our iWay, IKEA way of purchasing things, services, and products,
Yeah.
basically. And this is, yeah, code of conduct, it would be called in most other
Mhm.
companies. And it applies to the direct procurement, where it's implemented with every supplier, where we also do audits and development to make sure that it stays on a good level. In the indirect, we work with it as well.
Yeah.
And especially with our biggest suppliers, we work closer with them around it. But also, of course, depending on the nature of a supplier, like what kind of industry they are in,
Mhm.
what kind of country they are in or
Yeah.
region. We will work closer also with small suppliers in some cases around it. And when I say work close, it's very close,
Yeah.
even with small suppliers. So I would say we keep a good track of it. And yes, to be able to enhance that was definitely part of the investment that we have done. Yes. So some of the developments that we have done lately, actually some of the biggest service providers for things in the world. We have gotten really good feedback from them, how it
Mhm.
helped them to get better, to identify things that weren't perfect, that they could do much better. So that we are quite proud about right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see it as, I don't want to say responsibility, but the role that you play is consultative to your suppliers as well. It's not a you must do A, B, and C before you're considered to be selected as a supplier from a sustainability perspective. But let's work together and use all the kind of knowledge and insights that we have to help you get better. That helps all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not either or, it's both and in a
Yeah,
way. Yeah. And then the way our highway is structured is that you need certain things in place just to start up.
yeah,
And those are really basic things like no child labor, not violating any
yeah.
laws, and things like that. But then we have some additional requirements as well, which are most of it based on legal requirements as
Hmm.
well. But that we can give some grace time for in the beginning, and then we work together on solving those over the first 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Because is not everything is that critical, but still
Mhm.
it's important. So then we work together on it and we do the improvement projects. And then we also follow up. So follow up is, of course, in form of an audit. It's very much a control, like, are you
Mhm.
doing this? Are you doing that? But then when we find deviations, yeah, then we make a common project to make it better. So
And who within the team, like how is that structured in terms of follow up and audit? Do you have kind of sourcing, category management, going to sourcing, going to supplier relationship management, and it's supplier relationship management folks, or kind of full service buyers who are responsible for everything related to a supplier? I'm just wondering for tips for
yeah,
anyone who's listening of how they can think through how can I operationalize that?
sure. So to do audits, it always needs to be someone who is disconnected from the business who
Hmm.
do the audit. Either you have an external auditor or you have a separate audit department
Yeah,
in your company that reports differently than the procurement manager, so to say. So that's for the audits. Then what to do with the outcome of an audit. Yeah, and even if they are the auditor, the audit itself is done together with the people who work with the supplier on a
yeah,
daily basis.
yeah.
And there we have, in our direct procurement, we work with a team of one person that is focusing on logistics and, how to say, operational matter connected to capacity, and tactical as well, connected to capacity and planning, and one person who has an engineering
Hmm.
responsibility, and then one person who is overall responsible for the business development with the supplier. And depending on what the deviations are, it could be different people in the team who pick it up and run it together with
Yeah.
the supplier. Mostly it's the one who is overall responsible, the business developer who works with the sustainability topics.
Hmm.
In some cases, of course, there might be, we have departments with specialists
Yeah.
in different areas, energy, and we have many programs like connected to better raw materials and things like
Hmm.
that as well. So in some cases we make special teams with our internal specialists, work with the supplier based on that. But the most common is that it's this team of three and they deal with it the way that they see is best for that case. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joel, I know it's about time to wrap up. I want to thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today and just talking a little bit about IKEA's journey and opening up into kind of the transformation journey that you've been on. Because I know we talked before, even when we went off mic, how valuable it is for organizations to understand kind of where they are and on their journey, and that it's not always obvious in terms of you sometimes look at yourself and think, wow, all these other companies must be at level 10 and I'm at a level 1, whatever. And the reality is there's a lot of in between,
Yeah,
a lot of
I mean,
organizations.
so far I've not in reality met the company who have a perfect
No,
procurement setup. That I've not encountered so far, not in your interviews, and not
no.
I'd say in any conference or something either. Most companies do something good, but
It's all about growth, all about how we collectively grow as a profession, which helps us all and
yeah, and
kind of
also
sharing
to
those
be kind of,
experiences.
I think also it's very important to be able to feel a bit proud and happy and to be able to swim in the situation that is at hand, because we'll never be perfect. Things are changing all the time. So even if you put up something which is perfect in one moment,
Yeah.
one little bit later there is a reorganization, and then it's different again. It's like But that is the work, kind of.
So
It's part of the work.
transformation becomes continuous improvement, right? It's
Yeah.
not that you finish your transformation so you can sit back now and say, well, we did that for 3 years. Now we're going to sit back for 3 years and just let everything run swimmingly.
No, it's not the destination like that.
No.
It's a big kickoff, and then it's a continuous journey.
Yeah.
That's the way we see it. Yeah.
Well, Joe, I'm going to include a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes for today's episode in case anybody would like to reach out, just chat a little bit more about the journey that you've been on.
Sure.
But I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing that with the Art of Procurement community today.
Thank you so much, Phil. And I must say, I'm a little bit starstruck sitting here in the interview. I'm really happy to be able to talk to you after listening to your podcast for many years and enjoying them a lot. So big thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's Friday, so I wish you a nice weekend.
Enjoy the weekend. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Joel, and thanks a lot, everybody, for listening. We will be back again next week with another Art of Procurement. Until then, take care, everybody. If this episode struck a chord with you, please do send it to somebody. We grow here at Art of Procurement through word of mouth, and that would be really appreciated. You can also support us by giving us a thumbs up, a star rating, or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Since 2015, we've built the world's largest free resource for procurement professionals looking to elevate their impact. Our resources span podcasts like this, videos, blog posts, papers, and events. To join us on the inside and to ensure you never miss an episode, a webinar, an event, or a post, please do subscribe to our weekly newsletter, This Week in Procurement. You can do that at artofprocurement.com/subscribe. That's artofprocurement.com/subscribe. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.